Thank you, David. Great presentation. I'm excited to be here this evening. I'm Dave Dye. I'm with DFD Architecture, Sustainable Building Design. And tonight we're going to talk about net zero for all. You've been seeing some very wonderful houses, but you look at them and go, boy, could I afford that? Well, we're going to talk about something probably more in a reasonable range in this net zero for all presentation. Tony Reames of the University of Michigan will be presenting, and also Tom Tishler of Kalamazoo Valley Habitat for Humanity will be presenting. And we'll start off tonight with Tony, Dr. Reames, and he is an assistant professor at the University of Michigan School for Environment and Sustainability. He directs the Urban Energy Justice Lab and conducts research in the emerging field of energy justice, investigating fair and equitable access to affordable, reliable, efficient, and clean energy. He employs energy analysis, policy analysis, GIS to understand residential energy disparities, focusing on the production and persistence of spatial, racial, and socioeconomic inequality. Dr. Reames also has a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering. So I'm an architect, he's a civil engineer, we communicate well. And then he also has a PhD in public administration. So welcome, Tony, please present.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dave, for that introduction. So the topic of my talk tonight is looking at this issue of residential energy insecurity. And what I want to do is just frame the conversation for Tom. Hopefully he'll take it away and show some more examples of affordable net zero energy housing. And so one issue that we're dealing with here in the US, and this was pre-pandemic, is the state of energy insecurity. And the Residential Energy Consumption Survey conducted by the Energy Information Administration found that 1 in 3 households faces energy insecurity. That means they're unable to afford energy to meet basic needs. And as Dave said, when we think about net zero energy homes, we're often probably imagining something like this, right? A home that's covered by solar panels. There's an electric vehicle parked in the driveway, which is a really pleasant picture that we all can wrap our minds around. But this image highlights 2 underlying assumptions that make net zero energy homes less equitable. And that's that they are often for the wealthy, and that they're often new build single family homes and sometimes not in urban areas. And so if we want the net zero industry to really grow and to reach everyone, we have to understand what the inequities are that limit access to net zero energy homes. And so what does the state of energy insecurity really look like? Again, remember, 1 in 3 households faces energy insecurity. And some of the issues that they experience is about 14% of American homes have received a disconnect notice. About 11% of homes are keeping their homes at unhealthy temperatures, either too hot in the summer, too cold in the winter. And then 1 in 5 homes are making this decision between heating or eating. So the heat or eat dilemma, reducing or foregoing basic necessities in order to pay their home energy bills. And we know this looks different across the country, right? So we can see in this chart here, the percentage of homes in different regions of the country that are experiencing energy insecurity. And on the left-hand side, about how many homes that include. So across the country, we're talking about 37 million homes. Here in the Midwest, that equates to about 7.4 million homes who are experiencing these cases of energy insecurity. And again, these numbers are pre-pandemic. A study out of Indiana University found that the pandemic has really exacerbated or deepened these issues of energy insecurity. And so they did a survey back in May and found there were some racial disparities when it came to energy insecurity. And so African-American households 16% were experiencing severe energy insecurity, 19% of Hispanic Latinx households, and 9% of white households. And then the chart on the right kind of shows how that breaks down across households who received the stimulus check and households who didn't. And you can see that the stimulus check did reduce some of the severity of energy insecurity, but we still have a lot of people that were experiencing it. And so what else should we understand about interplays between energy and demographics? So in the first panel, we talked a little bit about programs for energy efficiency, energy waste reduction. And so a lot of those programs often target high consuming households. And so what we see here is that on average, white households consume more energy when compared to Black, Asian, and Hispanic households. But when it comes to a measure of energy efficiency, say if we normalize consumption across square foot, we see that there are some differences across how energy use intensity or the amount of energy using per square foot of the home breakdown, where Black and Hispanic households are actually consuming more energy per square foot, meaning as a proxy, their homes are less efficient. You see similar trends when it comes to energy cost. And so if you're consuming more energy, more kBTUs, that's going to equal to more dollars nominally. But if you look at it as a percentage of income, or what's known as energy burden, again, you see Black and Hispanic Latinx households are spending a larger portion of their income on energy costs. The folks at the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy just recently put out their National Energy Burden Study. And this is just a chart that shows, how energy burdens differ across different types of groups. So if the median energy burden in the US is 3.1% of income, you can see when it comes to different income groups starting in the left, that low-income households with older adults are spending 9.3% of their income compared to non-low-income households who are below the median at 2.3. And you can see racial disparities, age disparities, disparities across renters and owners, and also disparities across the type of housing that people are living in. You can also again see how energy burdens are different across the country. And so here in the East North Central census region, a median income for the region is about 3.6%, but for low-income households, it's 9.1%. So a big gap between kind of the median energy burden for all and what low-income households are paying. And so now I want to jump into just a couple studies that we've done in the Urban Energy Justice Lab here in Michigan that will kind of highlight and continue to highlight the need for focusing on net zero energy or access to net zero energy homes across different groups. So one of the challenges, particularly in urban areas, is this idea of residential segregation. So Detroit Metro is one of what's known as a hyper-segregated metropolitan area, and that's where you see large clusters of racial identity or income levels. And so this is a map of Wayne County, Michigan. You can see the purple outline of the city of Detroit. And what you see here is that the red clusters on the left are low-income census block groups. And so you see clusters of low-income block groups in the city of Detroit surrounded by the green areas, which are higher income block groups. And that correlates very strongly to racial segregation that you see, where red areas are predominantly African-American households, yellow, predominantly Hispanic Latinx households, and green white households. And so again, you see a concentration of African-American households in the city of Detroit, and in the southwest side of Detroit for Latinx households surrounded by communities with more white households. And so we were able to take some data, some energy consumption data, looking specifically at heating consumption, because you can correlate that more closely with the physical structure of homes. And so if you see high consumption, high inefficiency, you can relate that to the efficiency of the home. And on the left-hand side, our model shows that the red areas are where homes are consuming the most energy, particularly because they're larger. But then when we normalize by the size of home, you see a shrinkage of the red areas, and those are areas that are least efficient. And so you see most of those in and around the city of Detroit. And when we look at how these two maps kind of differ across certain demographic groups, what we see is that areas that had higher median incomes, although they had higher consumption, they had lower inefficiency, and so those homes are more efficient. We didn't find any differences in consumption across race because it's cold everywhere, but we did find racial differences when it came to the efficiency of that heat being used. And so areas with more white households, efficiency went down. Areas with more African American and Hispanic households, inefficiency went up. And the same thing when it came to owner-occupied households, consuming more energy, but on average being more energy efficient. And so some people will say, well, why don't these households just buy more efficient appliances, buy a more efficient HVAC system? And so we wanted to look at what is the issue with access and affordability to energy efficient technology. And we wanted to take something very simple like an LED light bulb. And so we know that lighting is changing, becoming more efficient. Prices are starting to go down on the most efficient bulbs, but we still see that only 29% of households have at least one LED bulb. Low-income households making less than 50K are less likely to purchase LEDs. So we went into about 130 stores in and around Detroit. We divided the zip codes into 4 poverty strata. And so I just want to briefly show you what we found. So when we looked at stores, we had, again, 4 categories, whether the area was less than 10% of the households in poverty, all the way up into 40% or more in poverty. And we found that most of the stores still had some incandescent light bulb in all zip codes. In higher income areas, so that less than 10%, CFLs were kind of going away, and so they were less prevalent. But look at the LED access or availability on the right-hand side. You see about 91% of stores in the high income, low poverty areas carried LED bulbs. But in the high poverty areas, only about 57% of the stores carried LED bulbs. So in poor areas, you could actually go into a store potentially and not find any LED bulbs on the shelves. And even more interesting was the price of those bulbs. So this chart looks at the average price in those different income zip codes. And so the teal color, you can actually see as you got to the poorer areas, the price of an incandescent bulb actually went down some. And the price of an LED bulb continues to go up as communities get poor. And so that gap almost is twice that in a poor area to transition from an incandescent to an LED as it was in the higher income areas. And so again, if you're talking about communities that are faced with all types of financial challenges, if the most efficient technology is too costly, then they're stuck with low efficiency, low cost equipment. The last panel talked a little bit about different programs and pilots to access financing. We did a study looking at the energy efficiency financing donut hole or coverage gap. So on one end, you have folks who qualify for government assistance, and one end you have folks who have the money or the credit worthiness to fund the improvements on their own. But we were really interested in, what is the market of folks that fall in the gap? They make too much money to qualify for government assistance, but not enough to pay for it or have some credit issues. And so we found that 1 in 8 Michigan households fall into this gap. So that's about 460,000 households. If you look across the state, you can see that this is the number of households in each county. So of course, the counties that are most populous have the most households in that gap. But if we did it as a percentage of households in the county, you see that there are some counties that a higher percentage of their households actually fall into the gap because they're either, just above poverty or have, some of these credit challenges. We did this project in collaboration with Michigan Saves, who we analyzed their data for about 13,000 to 14,000 Michigan Saves applications to understand what the credit score was on people who were approved and not approved, and use a model to come up with this. I don't know if this actual program came up just in the last panel, But when we talked about filling the gap, one thing we were excited about was that in Governor Whitmer's original budget, she had included some money for energy efficiency for folks that were just over 200% of poverty. I think it was 200 to 350 or something like that. But that was not ultimately approved. But there is this study or pilot with Michigan Saves, DTE, EcoWorks, Habitat for Humanity, and Walker Miller that is providing an opportunity to fill that gap for folks who are just above 200% of poverty. And so again, my goal today was to kind of highlight and hopefully set Tom up to give us some concrete examples of how we overcome these challenges and expand net zero energy residents to households that are struggling and facing these energy challenges. And so I love this quote from an employee at RMI who says, if the net zero energy industry is going to be successful in the long run, social equity must be central to how municipalities, planners, designers, engineers, and financiers develop solutions that enable underserved populations to access NZE residences. And so that's my contact information. You can check out our website, urbanenergyjusticelab.com, for any of our studies. And I look forward to the conversation during the Q&A.
Thank you, Dr. Reames. Very enlightening. Thank you. Now, that sort of sets the tone for some net zero energy homes that are more in the lower income range. And presenting that today will be Tom Tishler, who's with Kalamazoo Valley Habitat for Humanity. Welcome, Tom.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Oh, sure. Thank you for joining. I'm glad we can talk about it and have a conversation at the end. Tom has been a licensed builder in Michigan for almost 20 years, 13 of those years building Energy Star homes with Kalamazoo Valley Habitat for Humanity. 4 years ago, he decided to build all homes to the Zero Energy Ready Home standard, which is great. He and Habitat have learned how to build quality, efficient, healthy, affordable homes that are ready for renewable energy when the time comes. So they're all set. Their focus on the occupants of the home drive their mission to build the best homes they can and keep overall operating costs to a minimum, which is important, as we saw from Tony's presentation. Tom has a bachelor's degree from Western Michigan University in both philosophy and wood technology and is a NAHB certified green building professional. And welcome, Tom, and please present.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Dave. This is very odd for me to be presenting like this. I don't do a whole lot of presentations, but the ones I do, I generally have an audience. And so it's very strange to be sitting in a quiet room looking at a screen, but I'll try my best here. Tony set me up perfectly for this. The folks that he's talking about, low-income folks, people of color, people who have been affected by economic conditions, typically anyway, are even more so affected than other folks when it comes to heating and energy bills. That's my presentation today is about affordable zero energy ready homes. Like Dave said, about 4 years ago, we decided to take the leap and start building all of our homes to the zero energy ready home standard, which is certified by the Department of Energy. They basically, we start with Energy Star, that's our baseline, and then we get Indoor Air Plus certification for healthy homes. And then we do a water conservation and solar ready portion as well, so that our houses are super energy efficient, really healthy, good for the environment, and just really durable, high quality homes with low heating bills. So, you know, our homes aren't fancy, you know, they don't have high-end materials, they don't, you know, they're small, they're compact, but we like to say they've got it where it counts. We've seen a lot of examples in life and, you know, in the building industry of zero energy homes that are really, really expensive, you know, upwards of $500,000 to $1 million and up. We want, our philosophy at Habitat is to build these homes, obviously for our clients, for our occupants, to try to give them the lowest cost of ownership that we can, but also to kind of spread the word that it doesn't have to be $1 million home. You know, this can be, we like to say that we want to be able to build a house that is zero energy or zero energy ready, that you can't tell from the curb that it is. We want something that's affordable, that's standard, because we think the only way it's going to be adopted large scale is for everyone to be able to do it. So that's kind of our secondary agenda besides saving money for our homeowners, for families. So what we build in Kalamazoo right now, we're building single family detached affordable housing. What that means is basically we're doing infill housing in existing neighborhoods, primarily in the city of Kalamazoo, city of Portage, and Kalamazoo County. We also serve the southeast quadrant of Allegan County, going toward the lakeshore. All of our new homes, like I said, are zero energy ready, certified by the Department of Energy, third party rated. That starts with Energy Star, plus Indoor Air Plus solar ready, plus water efficiency as well. Our latest houses, we're getting HERS scores in the neighborhood of maybe the mid 30s to the mid 40s, which is about 50 to 60% better than a code built home. So we like to brag about that a little bit. We do it with volunteers primarily. We do everything except mechanical, electrical, plumbing, drywall, and concrete work with volunteers. So we like to say, if we can do it with people who have never swung a hammer, then anybody can do it. So it's a little more complex than that, but we're proud of what we're doing. Our homes, the nice thing is when they're done, they're so efficient that if anybody wanted to add a renewable system in the future, typically solar would be the option, or wind. We've done the calculations, and a 5 to 7 kilowatt array, which would be about 15 to 20 solar panels, could take it to zero energy, which is a pretty low cost. I think right now we're looking at about $3 a watt for a solar panel system installed. So 5 kilowatts is about $15,000. It's a lot of money, but by the time you take off tax incentives and everything else, it's a whole lot cheaper than having to put a huge array on the roof. The other thing that I really like too is our houses, because we're getting the Indoor Air Plus certification, they're very healthy. Because the third party rating is checking all of our details, all of our flashings, all of our weather resistant barriers, how we flash our windows and doors, how we intersect our roofs and everything else, they're extremely durable. I like to say that before the siding goes on the house, you should be able to take a fire hose to it and not have a leak. So we have 2 layers of weather resistant barriers, you know, the siding plus the house wrap plus styrofoam on the outside, and that gives us a very, very durable structure. They're also very resilient. We've been doing some research along with some other Habitat affiliates, and I've seen pictures out of Texas from a couple of years ago where they had tornadoes that ripped roofs off of homes. I've heard from the department, well, from FEMA, that a lot of homes, they have roof assemblies that, you know, typically when you get a storm in Michigan, you get high wind, it rips the shingles off the house, and then it rains 2 or 3 inches. And so it rips all the shingles off the house, exposes the house, and then floods the house. And here you have a low income family, that's the only place they have to live. A lot of times they don't have extended family where they can go stay. So now what are you going to do while you wait 2 or 3 months for a contractor or insurance company to come fix your house? So what we do is we actually run a rubber membrane over the entire roof before we shingle it. We also add extra truss strapping and everything else. So we dare the wind to rip the roof off. It's a very, very resilient structure, and something that the vast majority of builders don't do. But a couple of examples of spending just a little bit more money, but really making something that's focused on the occupants. You know, our families, a lot of them have come from really bad situations. The last thing they need is to move into yet another substandard place to live. We also have a lot of homeowners who the homeowners themselves or their children have asthma and allergy issues. Some of it can be traced back to living in substandard apartments or homes where they have cockroaches or mice when they were babies, which can lead to asthma in later life. We have people who have been lead poisoned. We have people who have had, we're not quite sure because it's hard to prove, but radon exposure. So we take a lot of steps to make sure that our houses are super, super healthy. All low VOC or no VOC products. We install a great radon system. Obviously, no lead-based paint. Couldn't do it if we wanted to, but that's gone by the wayside, thank God. But at least they're in a new structure that is, far, far better than anything else they've ever lived in before. How we build, the biggest reason for keeping costs down is keeping it small and simple. Like I said, there are lots and lots of examples of net zero homes that are beautiful, beautiful homes. They're gorgeous. I'm not disparaging them at all, but they're 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 square feet. Keeping it small, compact, simple is the best way to go as far as conserving energy, obviously. We build on a slab foundation. Here in Michigan, basements are kind of one of those things that everyone wants, so I've gotten a lot of pushback on that. But when you build on a slab, it's safer to build for volunteers. There's less volume to heat and cool, less cost to build the home. If you want to build a basement, there's a lot of work that goes into it to be able to waterproof it, especially in the Kalamazoo area. We're a low-lying area. So I had a builder tell me one time, he said, if you build a house with a basement in Kalamazoo, you're basically building a 2-story house and shoving it into the wet ground. So don't do it. We focus really hard on the building envelope. So that is the exterior walls, the roof, the windows, doors. We upgrade our windows to triple pane windows, which are not really that expensive. They kind of have a bad rap that way. We don't use super expensive windows, but they are triple pane. The U value is about 0.2, so they're about R5 in the glass. We do lots and lots of air sealing. We do stud cavities. We do foam insulation on the outside. Probably not the best environmentally friendly material, but we're working on other options, trying to figure out other options right now, actually. But for now, it gets us a very, very tight envelope. The HVAC is critical in a house. Our HVAC budget is probably about 20% of the cost of the house, and we only use a very, very good HVAC company in Kalamazoo. The HVAC has to be right size to the house. It has to be dialed in so that it's the proper size. Our houses now don't require much heat or cooling. So a typical, say, 1,000 square foot ranch on a slab has a 15,000 BTU furnace and about a 9,000 BTU heat pump for the air conditioning. So if you're able to downsize like that, you can get very, very efficient. The prep for future solar is really easy. We just run a conduit from the meter panel to the roof, and it's all set so that somebody doesn't have to go in and chase wires later. It's a little more complex than that, but it's maybe a few $100s worth of materials. It's ridiculous not to do it when you're building a house because everything's open and it's so easy to do. Our homes are affordable, but most important to us is that it's repeatable. I see a lot of pilot projects out there, which are great. I love pilot projects. They really show what you can do. But the problem is pilot projects a lot of times are just that. They happen once, they're a one-off. I really want to be able to repeat this over and over and over again over many, many, many years. And if we get a little too crazy with it, if we get a little too expensive with it, then we're not going to be able to build as many homes and we're not going to be able to repeat it. And then, of course, we've got a good philosophy in our staff, continuous analysis and improvement. Every time we finish a house, we say, okay, what could we have done better? What did we do right? What did we do wrong? And constantly looking for newer methods, newer materials, more efficient stuff. This is a typical home that we would build. This one we actually won from the Department of Energy. We won a Housing Innovation Award back in 2018. We're pretty proud of. Little old Kalamazoo. It's a little over 1,000 square feet, built on a slab. It's in the Millwood neighborhood of Kalamazoo. 3-bedroom, 1 bath. It has a Detson furnace. It's a Canadian furnace. The smallest American-made furnace is about 3 times too big. So we had to go to Canada to find a small enough furnace. This one had an HRV. We're going to ERVs now, energy recovery ventilators. It has a Navion 98% efficient tankless gas water heater. We're looking at, because I know the trend now is going toward electrification, so we're looking at possibly using heat pump water heaters. Our houses are so small that we worry about them cooling off the house a little bit, but that's another whole other session. This one, we got a HERS rating of 46. We've come down recently. Our last house was, I think, 36 or 37. Zero Energy Ready Home said we had to do under 62, so we hit that easily. The annual energy cost, which we're really, really proud of, is $710 a year. And that's in Kalamazoo, where we get, I mean, most of you folks are in Grand Rapids, so you get even more than us, but we get about 72 inches, 6 feet of snow a year. $710 for the entire year is gas and electric. And of course, durable, healthy, and safe. Great home for the occupants. And the families moved in. They've had 0 complaints. It's worked out wonderfully for them. The benefits to the occupants, obviously, lower energy costs, they're healthier, it's a more comfortable home. When you build a home that's super insulated with triple pane windows, they're very quiet. You don't hear your neighbor with a chainsaw or the neighbor's dog barking. They're very, very quiet homes. They're also very comfortable. The temperature fluctuations are very, very small. In fact, our furnaces have modulating gas burners and modulating electric fans, so that the temperature, the furnace gives out just enough heat to keep the temperature at whatever it's set at, say 70 degrees. And instead of having an old drafty house where it gets down to 65, the furnace kicks on, it ramps up to 72, then it goes back to 65. Our houses, if you've got the thermostat set for 70, it's going to oscillate somewhere between 69.9 and 70.2. So you're going to have these very, very comfortable homes. And obviously, they're not drafty, so you're looking at more health benefits as well. I already talked about durability and resiliency in disasters. One thing I didn't talk about is all of our homes are universally designed. We started doing that about 10 years ago. So we said that really there's no reason in this day and age to be building a new home that the family can't live in for their entire life. And it gets into environmental things as well. If you have to take a brand new house 10, 15 years from now and completely remodel it to widen the doorways and to put on a ramp and everything else, you're spending more time, more money, generating more waste, more carbon, everything else. It's very, very easy to do right from the onset. So all of our houses have a roll-in entry, roll-in threshold, 3-foot wide doors, 3.5-foot wide hallways. We do larger bathrooms, so you have a 5-foot turning radius for a wheelchair. We add wood blocking inside of the walls for future grab bars, things like that. So our houses are not ADA accessible, but with just maybe a couple $100 worth of grab bars and whatnot, it will become completely accessible. So we're looking at lower income people too, who, you know, I've had friends who have had to put their parents into assisted living places, and it is outrageously expensive. You know, you're looking at $3,000 to $6,000 or $7,000 a month for some of the assisted living places. And if you can stay in your own home and maybe get some nursing care on the side to come in every couple of days, it's wonderful. You know, it's a huge benefit. The benefits to society, you know, I've mentioned that people have, you know, we've seen improvements in asthma triggers. I've had a homeowner tell me that her son, they had to do asthma treatments every single day, sometimes twice a day. After they moved into their house, they hadn't really noticed, but all of a sudden it dawned on her about 6 months later, they'd only done about 3 treatments. So lower medical costs, you know, we're looking at folks who, lower income folks are the people who are least able to deal with things like this. So we're looking at, you know, kind of an upward movement of folks. We're trying to get people out of poverty. We're trying to get them to build wealth. And when you have medical bills piling in, your wealth is not going to be there. You know, it's going to start bleeding you dry. Economic stimulus too. You know, the more money that we let people keep instead of sending to our utility companies, the more money is on their kitchen table for their other expenses, for sending their kids to college, for education, for whatever else they want to use it for. But it does stimulate the economy, you know, all of that, and it's local economic stimulus as well. So a lot of benefits to society as well. You know, I'm really glad that Tony was able to speak about sort of the inequalities of energy. It's something that up until a couple of years ago, I had never really heard of. I kind of always knew it instinctually, but I was very happy to find out that somebody out there is actually specializing in that. That's wonderful. We need that.
Okay,
So
well, now we can cut into that. So,
what's that?
no, well, now we should probably cut into that and give a little time for questions.
Okay, great. Yep, I think that is my last slide. Yep.
Okay. So, okay. Yeah, Tom, thank you very much. That's very insightful. Your houses are actually a little bit smaller than the houses that Kent County Habitat. But as a 3-bedroom house for 1,000 square feet, that's got to be a highly efficient house. So,
yeah, it is.
And so on slab on grade, originally they were building with basements, but they decided that the slab on grade was a much better way to go because of the efficiency of it. So, so thank you very much, Tom and Tony. Do you, you said, Tom, that a lot of the construction is done by volunteers, but it is a very well built quality home. So what generally is the income of those people that are able to qualify for those homes? What are they in the 200% category? What's that range?
We actually go by area median income, AMI. So our guidelines are 30 to 60% AMI. The way I always describe it to people is if you have a family, a household of 4, that means their family household income is somewhere between about $19,000 and $40,000 a year. So we're looking at folks who are working, obviously, who can afford a mortgage, because we do sell the house at the end for an affordable cost. We write a mortgage, and the other nice thing about Habitat too is all those principal payments come back in and fuel our construction budget. But we're looking for folks who are hardworking folks who have a job, who a bank won't touch, because their income is just a little on the low side and they're too much of a risk, and that's where we come in.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. Tony, have you been able to link in with any programs like in Detroit or Ann Arbor where you're able to help some of the more economically challenged populations?
Yeah, I think some of the things that Tom brought up, particularly the aging in place. And so in Ann Arbor, we're doing a aging in place efficiently program with some funding. Michigan Saves is involved in that. And so the city of Ann Arbor is looking at how they can use some of their resources to help senior households stay home. And a part of that is doing some of the health and safety improvements, reducing their energy burden by focusing on energy efficiency and even exploring renewable energy. We have a project in Detroit that's launching probably the first part of next year, where we're trying to do home energy score analysis and help homes come up with an individual energy plan, is what we're calling it. And so this will be after you've analyzed your house, how do we work with that homeowner, with the case manager, to actually implement things from the home energy score that will help them make their homes more efficient. And again, we're also considering whether renewable could be a part of that equation.
So how are you getting the financing for those people to be able to pull that off? Where's that coming from?
That is part of the challenge. So the Ann Arbor project has some funding from a foundation. The Detroit project, we have some money from National Science Foundation as part of a research project, but we're also working with the City of Detroit Sustainability Office working with the utility programs that were discussed in the previous panel. And so it's really the case manager understanding the whole suite of programs that are available at the government, utility, nonprofit scale based on the person's income, and then trying to implement all of those programs.
Right, and they were talking of some of those programs in the previous program to this, the previous presentation to this. Okay, do we have any questions from the audience? I'm not seeing any. Maybe I'm not aware of them.
Dave, we do have questions. There are questions.
What's the question?
Well, let me just go ahead and read it here. There's one for Tony. He says, Tony, I joined a bit late, but did you talk about ways for the middle gap of residents to afford to weatherize their homes? I know some utilities provide free weatherization kits, but for bigger retrofit projects, might be difficult for folks to afford.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think one was that Michigan Saves pilot with DTE and Walker Mill Energy Services, but trying to figure out, are there ways to either create a loan loss reserve that's held by, say, the state green bank, because Tom brought up, the issue of some banks just won't touch people whether they don't have the income or if they have some credit issues. And so trying to find alternative ways that, one, people can be approved. And so I think there was a pilot in Holland, Michigan, that looked at 12 months of utility bill payment instead of looking at your credit. So if you had paid your bills for a year and were caught up, then you would be approved for maybe some on-bill financing. And so trying to, think about pushing utilities toward considering on-bill financing or finding alternative funding streams through green banks or community banks that could help fund those activities.
Okay. Yeah, it's sometimes what we're about with there's another question.
Yeah, let me read one more here.
There's another question coming up.
Yep, for Tom or Tony. Are there city programs that encourage builders to build small, affordable homes? The persons from Grand Rapids area.
I can't really speak for the Grand Rapids area, but here in Kalamazoo, we really don't have any incentives for that. I know the city of Kalamazoo right now is working on a climate action plan, which may include something making builders comply to some sort of Energy Star guideline or something like that. But I don't know of anything that's in place yet.
Yeah, and I think that's the same thing in some other municipalities. Some of the climate action planning is starting to think about how you build smaller homes and incentivize that. But you do have to go through a lot of the regulation and look at, standard lot sizes and, all those codes that are on the books that don't actually or kind of de-incentivize building small. And I think Matt Grokoff in our plenary coming up next might talk about that a little bit in the Ann Arbor area.
Great.
Yeah, we actually have an area called the 49507 zip code area where they're trying to bring in smaller homes that are built, that are net zero homes that are modular and brought to the site, and they're about 732 square feet, and they've been doing some of those homes in the 49507 zip code. The problem is they're so wonderful that if they can't figure out the way to get financing to those homes, people who can well afford them just pick them up. So we're trying to figure out a way that we can get the people who really deserve those homes, that are renting homes, to get them the financing so they can live in those smaller homes that can be built right on a lot of vacant city lots. And so that's part of it's a neighborhood association in the 4907 zip code where that's happening. And I'm sort of working with Green Home Institute and making that happen in Brent Little. So, and it's neat. I like those little homes. I could move in myself, but that's not the point. The point is to try to provide homes for people who are renting that are good quality that they can move into. So that's what I know is happening in Grand Rapids.
That's nice.
So one last question out there?
All right, I'll read one more here.
Okay.
This is for Tom. Do you use any deconstructed materials in your builds, and do you anticipate working on multifamily units?
Excuse me, good question. Multifamily is definitely being looked at by a lot of Habitat affiliates, including ours. Kind of bigger bang for the buck, more efficient. Deconstruction materials we have not used. There's not really a huge resource of them around here. Also, I know with new construction, a lot of times with lumber and things like that, it has to be grade stamped to pass inspection. So it can be a little tricky doing that, but it's not completely out of the question.
Okay, so it could happen. Okay. Well, I've been getting. Thank you all. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Tom. Very informative. The next presentation will, I guess, be on their Viridian at County Farm. So if you type that in, you will get right to that next session. Thank you all for coming this evening, and thank you for listening to Tom and Tony talk about potentials for lower income net zero homes. So thank you all.
Thank you. Have
Thanks.
a good night.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Have a good